What's up, investors? We're back with AMD for this week's show. I just want to catch up on the latest events with this company. We're going to start off with just some general information, as you can see on the screen, but then we're going to dive into two key pieces. For one, they issued their annual report for 2021, so we're going to dive into that. And then we're going to go into the Xlinix acquisition, which went through, so we'll touch on a key tidbits there. And then we'll wrap this all up with the technical analysis, when to buy this stock. So let's just start off with the broad strokes here. So at least for this past week, you can see they started about 112, finished at 121. And for the year, which is more interesting, is they started the year at 150 and they're still at 121. So now the question is going to be, is this a decent time to buy? And so one thing that I'm looking at is this PE ratio. And it's a little bit high compared to the market. It's at 47, but for AMD, which is one of these growth stocks, this seems to kind of be the norm for them. If it's between 45 and 50, arguably it's not the best deal, but it's not a bad deal either. It's a very fair deal. If you're gonna look to buy, I'm looking for this PE ratio to be close to like 40 to 43 is probably a good time to buy. If you can get it below 40, that would be just incredible. I couldn't even tell you the last time I saw it below that mark. I've seen it touch 40, but not in the 30s. But keep in mind, I'm not watching this all day long either. So we'll go into actual prices once we get to the technical analysis. But I guess the last thing in terms of the generals here is their next earnings report is going to be close to the end of April. So we have a couple months to get the latest updates. So let's go into their Q4 earnings or their annual report. So overall, AMD just did phenomenal. They beat on all accounts. We have the adjusted earnings per share. They beat that by not a quarter, but it looks like about 16 cents here. Their revenue, they beat that by $300 million. So that's great. And then this specific segment here, which I believe has to deal with the cloud, I believe that's involved in this enterprise, or actually it's the data centers. The data centers, which is their high growth revenue stream right now, that is what's in this enterprise embedded in semi-custom segment revenue group. So they beat that by 100 million. And I'd like to go a little bit deeper into their financial statements if we have time, but not in this show. This show is going to just kind of be broad strokes, and it's going to get, even the broad strokes are going to get pretty detailed. So let's just scroll down a little bit. I want to touch on a couple things. So once again, that enterprise, embedded, and semi-custom segment is the smaller of the company's two main segments, but it's generating a little over 1/3 of the company's revenue in 2020. I believe in this year, 2021, their new annual report, it's getting close to like 50%, at least for the fourth quarter, but we'll touch on that pretty soon. Overall, or however, it has been growing much faster than the computing and graphics segment as processing chips are being embedded in more and more products. Revenue for the computing and graphics segment also rose by about 32% to 2.6 billion in the fourth quarter, and their fourth quarter was about 4.8, which we'll touch on that. Once again, that Xlinix deal. So AMD first announced that it was going to acquire Xlinix in October of 2020 with a $35 billion stock acquisition. Or I'm sorry, I think it's a cash. No, it's a stock acquisition. AMD expects the deal to close sometime during the current quarter, and it did go through. So we'll touch on that briefly coming up. So AMD said that it expects its first quarter, so now looking ahead, to hit that 5 billion mark. And once again, we'll get the exact numbers soon enough, but first quarter for 2022, they're hoping to get 5 billion, which would reflect a revenue growth of about 45% year over year. For full year 2022, AMD expects revenue of approximately 21.5 billion, which would be a increase of 31%. Me personally, I'm looking for companies that have that 25% growth or higher, so this meets that criteria. And just to kind of wrap up this segment, we also have a quote from Lisa Su, which is their CEO. And she says that the semi-custom revenue would be a key driver of AMD's growth in 2022. We expect semi-custom revenue to grow this year, driven by continued strong demand for the latest Microsoft and Sony consoles. She said, adding that the current console upgrade cycle is outpacing all prior generations. So, once again, we're going to actually touch on a little bit of this too, just the companies that AMD is able to work with, and that's another reason why I like them. They're working with these high-profile clients, such as Microsoft, such as Sony, among others. So now let's actually get into the more detailed portion. Let's make this a little bit smaller. So record quarterly revenue of $4.8 billion, which is up 49%. It's been a record full year of revenue at 16.4, which is up 68%. They announced revenue for the fourth quarter of 2021, that once again, that 4.8 billion. Their operating income of 1.2 billion and net income of 974 million. For the full year of 2021, once again, that's 16.4. So let's just actually go right into the financials here. So this top, we're going to actually just focus on the GAAP portion, so this top chart here. So this is just looking at quarter four for this year compared to last year, and we even have quarter three, which is, let's make this a little bit bigger now. So we can see this quarter we had that $4.8 billion, which is up 49% year over year, and it's 12% quarter over quarter. Now, we're going to get into this a little bit later, but with their current estimate for their next quarter of like 5.1 billion or maybe 5 billion flat, you know, that's not a very strong growth quarter over quarter. I think it's like maybe 2 or 3%. I wish that would be a little bit higher, to be honest, but year over year, we're still kind of feeling this one out in terms of what do analysts really look at. Are they looking more at the year over year or the quarter over quarter? Because the quarter over quarter growth, based on what AMD is projecting, is very small, single digits, less than 5%, but year over year, it's very high, something like what we're seeing here, this 49%. So we'll see what analysts say as we progress through this quarter. Gross profit went up 67%, and this is a key thing for me. So the revenue went up 49%, but their operating expenses only went up 39%. So that just shows me that they're increasing their profit. You know, they're adding money with minimal expenses. So I love seeing that. And also their operating income went up 112%. That's huge. The other thing, the gross margin percentage. So this was the key factor for me. I love seeing this. Anytime a company can get to 50% or higher, I mean, that is just phenomenal. That's phenomenal for just any company, and the fact that AMD is able to do this so like quickly, I would say. I mean, last year they were at 45%, and just in 1 year they were able to add 5% on gross margin. I'm wondering if that has to do with the shortage in terms of the semiconductors, just because if there's a shortage and their expenses stay the same, the demand is going to be so high that they're able to raise the price on their product without really incurring any expense on their half. And that just has me a little concerned for the future. There is talk that the semiconductor industry, this shortage should start to alleviate come the second half of 2022, and if that were to occur, and that could lead to prices starting to lower again, which would, since they're right on that line, that 50%, that could easily chip away at their revenue. So we'll see how it plays out. You know, we'll keep our noses in the business here and see how it turns out. This second chart here, now this is just for the full year, and once again we're going to focus on the GAAP side. So this shows you the growth that we really want to see in terms of year over year, and the quarters just help us kind of nitpick a little more to see if anything goes wrong. But in terms of year over year, this is what we love. So they went from 9.7 billion to 16.4, 68%. I mean, that's just phenomenal growth. And the thing that, even though they have all these high-end clients such as the Microsoft, they have Amazon, the Sony, Facebook, or I guess Meta at this point, they have all these high-profile clients, and yet they're still pretty small. I don't have Intel's numbers up, but Intel in their year, they make like $80 billion. And so AMD is still very small. So there's still a big world out there for them. And they're just chipping away slowly and slowly. And then you have to consider the fact that semiconductors as a whole, as far as market share, that's just, the whole pie itself is also expanding too. So just a lot of things are going well for this industry, this company. That's why I really like them so much. Gross profit, I mean, that almost doubled. It went from 4.3 to 7.9. That's just phenomenal. Here once again, so now we're seeing the bigger picture, but still, this is incredible management, I'll call it, going from 45% gross margin up to 48. So they're very close, and I believe once we get down a little further in this article, I think it touches on the fact that the company actually plans on hitting that 50, maybe 51% in gross margin very soon, maybe even this first quarter of 2022. We'll see as we kind of scroll through. Once again, operating expenses, of course it went up as revenues go up, but it only went up 44% as opposed to 68% in revenue. And then net income, that went up considerably. Earnings per share also went up. So let's kind of just keep going through this article a little bit, because there are some noteworthy items that I just want to touch on, which gives you just a broad idea of what they've been doing and able to accomplish this quarter. So once again, those data center revenue doubling year over year, driven by growing adoption of AMD EPYC processors across cloud and enterprise customers. We expect another year of significant growth in 2022 as we ramp our current portfolio and launch our next generation of PC gaming and data center products. That was Lisa Su who said this. That's like their main revenue stream that they're targeting. They're still going to have their other revenue streams, but this is the one that seems to be growing the fastest. And I believe the whole idea behind it is the fact that a lot of companies are now going remote, and because they're going remote, they don't have that in-office data center. They want like some secure nowhere type data center, and that's what AMD is targeting right now. They're targeting that data center by implementing these EPYC processors for those companies. So let's keep coming down a little bit. The company repurchased $756 million in common stock during this quarter. So the fact that they're buying back stock, that means the stocks that we own should go up because there's less supply of the stock in the market. Cash from operations was $822 million in the quarter compared to $554 million a year ago and $849 million in the prior quarter. So I just point that out because the fact that they're generating so much cash from their operations as opposed to their investing activities or their financial activities, that just shows that their operations are moving very smoothly here. Moving on, we have computing and graphics segment. That revenue was $2.6 billion, up 32% year over year and 8% quarter over quarter. This revenue that went up, that 32%, they're attributing that to their increase in their Ryzen and Radeon processor sales, which I believe those both should have their next generation come out second half of 2022, which will just increase efficiency in terms of the people who actually implement that next series, which is I think the 7000 series, currently on the 6000 series. Another segment, once again, we're going to bring it back to that enterprise, embedded, and semi-custom segment. Revenue there was $2.2 billion, up 75% year over year and 17% quarter over quarter. And this was driven by their EPYC processors, which we talked about a little bit earlier. So moving down, overall for the year, they bought back $1.8 billion worth of their common stock. So once again, that's good for us who already own it. It means there's less out there, driving the price up. And so these are like, right here, it says the PR highlights. So I just want to touch on, because this brings up like who they're doing business with, some of the large, just key pieces of information that I think let me know what the company's up to, and just kind of show me where they're kind of heading in the future. So this first big blurb that we have here, I wanted to just kind of point out a couple things. So their leading cloud providers expanded their AMD powered offerings and more, with more than 130 new public instances launching in the quarter. And this includes Amazon's web services, which they're going from this EC2 to this, I thought it was EC3, but it looks like it's EC2 HPC 6A to M6A. A bunch of letters here, but overall it's supposed to just, them switching over is basically a step up. It's supposed to help with an increased workload. So the more complicated problems for their Amazon's customers, their client base, it's going to help them do their business, run their business a little bit more smoothly. Then we have Google, so Google's cloud services, they're launching some sort of AMD type service. Then we have IBM Cloud that's doing a similar thing in terms of their demanding workloads and solutions. And then we have this big one, Microsoft Azure, announced their latest generation, which once again, that's incorporating AMD's cloud services. So those are big names. We have Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and IBM, big companies all getting their hands on AMD's products. So that's big for the company. Another one, we have AMD and Meta. They're working together to define an open cloud scale single socket server based on AMD's EPYC CPU. And this is once again to help with that metaverse. And the fact that AMD is contributing to that, that's a big deal, because if you don't know, Meta, Facebook, they announced that they plan on spending billions of dollars on this, 10 billion I believe, if not more. And as we saw, AMD, their total revenue was like 18 billion. So just hypothetically, which it's not going to be the case, but if Facebook were to give AMD that whole contract, that whole 10 billion, I mean, that would just send AMD's stock through the roof. Just so we're all on board with like how much money is being just put out there right now. Another thing is AMD announced the new AMD Instinct MI200 series accelerator, which is the fastest accelerator for HPC and AI applications. Very interested in the AI, so I like AMD shifting into that to a degree. The MI200 series accelerators are powering the Oak Ridge National Laboratory Frontier supercomputer, which is the first exascale supercomputer in the United States. I read up about the exascale, and apparently that's like something like a million gigabytes of speed. I'd have to double check how it works, but it basically means that computer is running super fast, like it's like the fastest of its kind by like 100 or something. So the fact that AMD is helping provide for the fastest computer in the United States is, I mean, it speaks volumes for the company. And so here's the next piece. AMD now powers 73 supercomputers, a more than 3x increase compared to its November 2020 list. AMD also powers 4 out of the top 10 most powerful supercomputers in the world, as well as the most powerful supercomputer in EMEA. I have no idea what that stands for. I want to take a guess, but I'm not going to. And then this next piece, which you gotta love this. So one of their big competitors, everyone always compares these to NVIDIA. NVIDIA is adopting Ryzen Threadripper Pro processors to help power next generation cloud gaming experiences. So NVIDIA is even calling on AMD to help with them. I think this relationship goes both ways, but I definitely see NVIDIA reaching out to AMD more often than I've seen AMD reaching out to NVIDIA. So that's just something I think that is great. It's great. It's great for all parties here. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh yeah, I like this one. So AMD was recognized on Newsweek's America's Most Responsible Companies for 2022. And so this includes their environmental, social, and corporate governance efforts. So very socially responsible company. I love that about them too. Their current outlook. So now we're going to look ahead. I think I touched on this a little bit, but we'll just reiterate it with the exact numbers here. So for the first quarter of 2022, AMD expects revenue to be approximately $5 billion plus or minus 100 million, which is an increase of 45% year over year, or approximately 4% quarter over quarter. So now I don't really like seeing that 4% quarter over quarter. I wish it would be, in the double digits, but because this company is growing so quickly, I guess they're starting to hit a flat line. But if you're looking at year over year, I'd have to go back to see what were they doing last year. Were they also growing 4%, but compared to 2019, was it still like 50% growth? Something that I'd like to look into. But yeah, so I don't really like the 4%, but I love that 45% year over year. So we'll kind of see how this shapes out as the year progresses and as we just kind of get more knowledge on AMD. So AMD expects its non-GAAP gross margin to be approximately 50.5% in the first quarter. So that's what I was talking about. So now they hit 50% in the fourth quarter. Now they're thinking it's actually going to grow a little bit more, just that extra 0.5%. Really doesn't mean that much, but when you're talking about a company that's making billions of dollars, that could easily be, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars. So every little bit counts. So that's good to hear. For the full year of 2022, AMD expects revenue to be approximately $21.5 billion, which would be an increase of 31%. So right there, that hits my mark because I want that 25% or greater. But once again, you can already see they're slowing down a little bit because, of course they could, make more than they're projecting, but last year, or I guess I should say this year's end, they were up like 49%, and all of a sudden it's scaling back to 31%, which is still tremendous growth. It's just not as much. So we'll just see how this all kind of plays out. I still really like this company. So that's 31%. AMD expects non-GAAP gross margin to be approximately 51% for the full year. So for the full year, this year, it was actually 48%. They're expecting for the full year of the current year, this upcoming 2022, it's actually going to grow 3% more and hit that 51% mark. So that's great. I hope they hit that mark. So that kind of, we're not going to cover this one. Okay, so let's move on to the next article. Now we're going to get into this Xlinix deal. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. So this Xlinix deal, the much anticipated Xlinix deal, has finally gotten approved from the Chinese regulators. That was the country we're waiting on. And this will have a huge impact on the future of the company. It will introduce a new market and wider user base as the company continues to grow. 2022 revenue numbers will see a contribution from this Xlinix merger, and it will push the stock to new all-time highs, and the competition with Intel will only heat up further. Once again, Intel's a company I like too. We'll probably do another video on them in the coming weeks here. But that Xlinix deal, so that's a question. I'm not sure if AMD's current projections of that 21 billion, is that incorporating Xlinix's potential added revenue? We'll see. We'll definitely know come April when they issue their fourth quarter or their first quarter 2022 numbers and their new projections or updated projections. So not sure if that's been added in. I want to say the analysts have added it into their price, but has AMD actually added it into their numbers? Not sure yet. That we'll find out soon enough. So to continue on that, on this Linux deal, so the recently approved deal, however, isn't being fully facilitated with any cash payments to Xlinix shareholders. So this was a stock acquisition. I'd probably say cash earlier, but it's a stock acquisition. So Xlinix investors will instead be compensated with AMD stock. So if you had any, you actually are going to, all of a sudden, your Xlinix shares are going to convert into 1.72 shares of AMD, for every 1 share of Xlinix that you own in that acquisition. In that, the acquisition has now been fully approved and the share exchange ratio is fixed. Linux stocks movement is now entirely linked to AMD's. And so back, I'm sure I mentioned it in a video probably a little while ago, maybe a month or two. I was very much interested in buying some Xlinix stock because I felt like Xlinix price or AMD's price in comparison to Xlinix's price showed that for every share of Xlinix, you were actually getting a better deal for AMD. I didn't actually go through with that plan, but I believe if I would have, I probably would have got a little bit extra AMD. I don't know how the 0.7 shares will work. Does it just automatically round up? No idea, but whatever the case was, I think you would have made more shares of AMD if you would have bought Xlinix. Like $1,000 of Xlinix would have turned into something like I don't know, like 1,200 of AMD, something like that. So not like a huge difference, but still, it was something that I was looking into, just never actually went through with it. The stock finance transaction should now be finalized within a few months, resulting in a proverbial whole that is greater than the sum of the two parts. And then our last article here says Linux is going to bring strength in their aerospace and automotive chips to AMD. So once again, AMD does have a deal with a couple cars. I'm trying to remember. I don't think it might be Ford. I'd have to look into it, but I know there's three cars, unless I'm mixing them up with like Intel or something. But either way, I know AMD's chips are in some vehicles out there, and so apparently this Linux deal is going to help them there. Something new to AMD is going to be that aerospace. Space travel is starting to pick up here, and so of course that industry also needs semiconductor chips. So the fact that AMD can actually add another revenue stream into their portfolio, all the better. Okay, so now let's move on to the technical analysis. This is what we've all been waiting for. So this is just based off the previous markings that I drew up here. So once again, that $100 mark, that's still going to be my optimal time to buy. You can see over here that dark 121 off here on the side. So that's where we're currently at. I drew in a 114 mark. So that would be one of those flex periods where if we drop below 114, it could easily trace back to 100, which to me is that optimal time to buy. Will we hit that mark again? It wouldn't surprise me if we drop down there again sometime this year, if not a couple times this year, but I feel like as the quarters keep piling up, it's just going to be less and less likely. It might have been the last chance. So just as a backup buying opportunity, 114 in my opinion is also a decent time to buy. We do have, at least at the time it was, and I'll stick to that just because we have. To me, it was more of a resistance line, just because back here in like third quarter of 2021, they touched it a couple times and bounced back, but then all of a sudden they shot off past it and hit all the way up to 150. And so I just want to mention that this line, I just kind of drew it in there willy-nilly. I didn't really pick anything. You know, if I wanted to pick, say, the tops of this decrease, I guess I could probably, you know, I could easily argue like that's fair. So we did go above it just recently. So I honestly would expect this to kind of pull back a little bit on Monday or this week. If we were to pass it, then maybe this downtrend we can take it out, because then we might be on a new uptrend, or probably even more likely we might be in a little bit of consolidation period. I think that's definitely probable. But in terms of buying this stock, for me personally, I guess, you know, once again, that $100 mark is like optimal. If it hits there, you want to just pile in at 100, you know, 100, 110, pile in there. Right now 121, I could easily see this one coming back. I would say probably about 114. You know, the low to mid-teen range is definitely a time that, you know, it seems like that's kind of the pivot mark right now. And so if it drops back down to that range, if you're feeling, I guess, bullish in terms of you think that's like the new low point for them, then that's a time to buy. You want to buy there at that dip moment, and then if it traces back up, great. Or you could look to maybe sell out of there if you're feeling more bearish because you think, oh, well, if it drops below that line, it's probably going to trace back to 100. It really just depends on how you look at it. For me personally, I don't really think I'm going to add any shares anytime soon. Of course, if it drops to 100, I'll definitely add in, maybe even 110. I'd consider it. Times to sell potentially, let's just say hypothetically, if it were to shoot off to 150, I'm probably going to sell out at that point. Not because it's a bad company or anything, it's just high probability that if it hits that mark again, it's going to come back down. How much further, I don't know, but that's forecasting way out there because at this point it doesn't look like it's going to hit that mark anytime soon. But I just want you guys to be aware that if you start seeing trends like this, I mean, there's no telling when it's going to peak out, but if all of a sudden you see this stock say shoot up to say 140, in the 140s, try to put a stop loss on the stock so that if it shoots off like that and all of a sudden starts coming back, pulling back hard, just like it came back here, you won't miss out on all those profits. You'll be able to sell out at a decent profit, and if it traces all the way back down, you can just buy back in again. It all depends on what type of mindset you're going by. I'm just saying that is a strategy that you can use. Or you can just do the buy and hold, because I do foresee this company growing a lot more over the future. But if you're just trying to make moves within the long-term strategy, that's something to consider. But yeah, overall, so just to wrap up, $100, that's like the load the boat situation. 114, that's a pivot point. So if you really like the company, it's a decent time to buy. It's definitely a fair time to buy. And otherwise, that's pretty much it. That's it. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, guys.